It's a ghost ball.
Yeah.
Guess who's coming to dinner, everybody? It's Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic review series for fans of all shapes and sizes. And today, we've got some more Sonic the Hedgehog comics, one of which that I just spoiled the subtitle of, but don't worry about that.
We'll get there, I suppose. But there's a super special we're going to cover first.
Yes, this is Brave New World, one of the, I would say, more remembered Penders comics.
I can understand why, also.
You know, we're going to have to get into it, because I saw it, read it, and I was like, not very remarkable.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
what the interest is, so let's see.
All right.
It's here and there. The story for this one, I mean, it's obviously called Brave New World, about the issue and the story, but it was written and drawn by Ken Penders, which is the first time he's done an entire special on his own, pretty much. He may have even inked this. Yeah,
That is interesting, because the art is... I don't think it's got any of the weird art that his other stuff that he's drawn has had.
There are some funny bits here and there, but
A little
by and
bit.
large, I agree.
Yeah, the art's
It's definitely
pretty solid.
Penders' style, but it's not got a lot of his worst hallmarks. And you can see, especially on the pages they're strolling through Robotropolis here, that Penders is really fucking good at backgrounds.
Yes, that is an excellent background.
Yeah, so the story for this one is the Freedom Fighters begin rebuilding in the husk of Robotropolis, but all is not well, as Sally and Sonic are put into an emotional funk by King Acorn's harsh orders, and the revelation that Sonic's parents were alive and roboticized, living under Robotropolis.
There are some things that happen in this story for sure. Well, I should say they're like revelations. There's some events, but it's mostly just like...
Revelations is a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much a sort of feelings-based issue, and I really do kind of get what they were going for here, because we start with this big recap of sort of what Mobotropolis was like and how they went to war with the Overlanders, and I think Penders just like traced some of Spacion's art from number 50 here, because the anime reject dude looks exactly the same.
Yeah, no, he is. That is interesting. Yeah, so there's this recap bit, and it brings up interesting detail that I had never considered, and yet is not actually touched on in this issue, which is that it's talking about how Mobotropolis was ruled by the king and Queen Acorn, who never even crossed my mind before. And it's like they mysteriously disappeared, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And it does not touch on it.
No, this issue does not care about the Queen, and frankly... We'll follow up on her in a while, but her place in the series is very questionable.
Okay.
I'll leave everybody to speculate on what the hell that's supposed to mean, but the majority of this issue is the characters exploring the ruins of Robotropolis, which I guess is now Mobotropolis again. It's the same place, but, you know, just...
Right.
They just changed it back to the name it was before.
I mean, makes sense.
Yeah. I will say, that is a cool image to start on. You know, a big old group of freedom fighters just walking in to Mobotropolis, if you want to call it that. You know, but it's all empty. It's an interesting image.
Yeah, I do really get what they were going for here. I don't know how successful it is exactly, but they've got this sort of melancholy tone because... They're exploring this place that used to be their home, but no longer resembles it. And, you know, that's what they're talking about as they're saying it, you know, so it's kind of actual character building. The problem for me is what Rotor says, which is all those missions into Robotropolis, and yet we never really contemplated the significance of Robotnik's actions on a personal level. Like, what are you talking about? Yes, you have. That's your entire fucking motivation.
I mean, there weren't any moments that were... Yeah, I can't imagine they... That doesn't make any sense now. I cannot think of any rationale around that one. Here's another question that may not have an answer. It's cool to have, you know, sort of a ghost town of what used to be Robotnik's headquarters. Why is it empty, though? I don't remember seeing all the robots get shut down or destroyed. They should at least be patrolling automatically, even if they're not doing much, I would think.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's some robots in this issue. They get attacked by a couple of them, but not very many. I'd imagine that maybe since Snively is here, he's hiding out here. Maybe he shut them down in an attempt to lay low. The only one that they fight is the one that's right next to where he's hiding, so maybe he was just keeping that one as a personal guard.
That makes the most sense.
That does make sense, but none of the characters acknowledge it. They don't seem to find it unusual. They should be suspicious that something is going on right off the bat.
I
Maybe
would guess
without-
that they're probably more concerned with really going out of their way to explore Robotropolis or Mobotropolis.
Yeah, but Lauren is right. I maybe it's
That
just
is
that
odd.
without Robotnik commanding them, that's left the remaining robots much more vulnerable to cleanup efforts.
Right.
I would have liked to see some of that, though, because that's what this issue is about. Like, okay, people, there's no one in charge of everything, but these robots would still, have defense mechanisms built.
Right.
Yeah, this is more like their first foray into it.
It would be cool to see them jump around and sort of take out the stragglers as they're, trying to then go to rebuilding, because,
Right.
that would be part of the cleanup effort, I would think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would assume so.
But yes, there are some robots. There is the Dynamac model of all things that attacks them. Like, I didn't expect that to show up again.
It also gets murked
yeah.
incredibly quickly, which is why I forgot that it's not just a robot. Because in the issue with that thing, it transformed into like a big spider thing. Here they just kind of knock it over.
I guess they've gotten so good at dealing with Robotnik's creations that it's just not a problem anymore.
Yeah, I guess. I do like the bit where they're fighting it, though, and Rotor just finds Snively hiding behind a curtain. And he's like, "You are a moron. All this commotion, you're fascinated with what's behind a curtain." Like, that is perfect.
I wish his face were a little more perfect. It looks really fucking weird in that drawing.
Damn it, I wanted to bring up the face.
Sorry, I stole that from you.
No, yeah,
It's fine.
Snively has two weird moments in this one. One, as he's discovered there and he's running off, he looks strange. And then later, when he gets captured by St. John, the perspective is just weird.
Yeah, well, it's the giant like net enclosing around him that looks like a vortex sucking him in, and it's also the big coming out of his mouth. Like physically, the letters are coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
Also, I should say that this is on purpose. But when I was first reading this, I was like, it's incredibly underwhelming. I would expect something better of Snively. Luckily, he is actually plotting something.
Right.
Even though he gets defeated in like 2 pages here, seemingly.
Yeah, they do show at the end that he's like biding his time in the prison of what is it, Devil's Gulag, I think they call it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's basically the vibe for most of the issue, is just them standing around talking about how, wow, it's so different. Oh man, we won. And that's, there's a level of melancholy to that. But then we get to the underground society of roboticized people. I don't know if they've started calling them Robians yet, but I'm just going to use that since it's easier. Who have had their free will restored because of the Ultimate Annihilator destroying the original roboticizer, I think? Something like that?
They just say the Ultimate Annihilator did it because it wrecked everything for some reason. I find that less plausible than tearing holes in reality, but whatever. At least they explained it. At first I was like, huh? But then they gave an explanation.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know you were talking about the Robians. There is actually one thing before that I wanted to touch on, which is, as you mentioned in the summary, the king talks to St. John. What have they done? I thought that, we would be done with this whole nonsense with the king when you just had the robotic copy. There's a fake out there, but no, this is just the way the king actually is. He's just a jerk and no one questions him. I mean, St. John does actually say, aren't you being a little, extreme? Because he accuses Uncle Chuck of all people. Don't do that. But they'll still go with what he wants.
Right.
And also, I guess there's been some time, so he's had time to recover. But it's very strange to see him so active and fired up in his current state. I would accept that maybe he could talk at this point or something. But I would think, but he can just get up and move around. I mean, not move around. He's in his bed, but
he can sit up.
He shouldn't be able to move his crystal limbs. I would
right.
Anyway, so first of all, why is he like that? He was a much better character in Sad AM. What have you done? And second of all, that his health state doesn't make sense to me.
This is where the sort of back and forth in how Penders and Ballers writes King Max is going to start to rear its ugly head, because we have Max basically saying, oh, Charles invented the roboticizer, he's a dangerous liability, he's a threat, and, you know, that doesn't seem right. And next week, we're gonna have an episode where Ballers tries to find an explanation for why the king would be saying that, which I think is better. And then after that, Penders is going to try and overwrite that change himself to have a different reason for why the king is saying that, and also potentially make him right, sort of. It's really weird.
We'll have to get into that later, because wow, okay.
It's a long story. It's hard to explain.
I will say, though, that scene is made slightly comedic, because the king is cut short by Dr. Quack, who's like, all right, that's enough. Think everything's going to be fine, my liege, but you got to rest.
Yeah.
One person. Well, if there's one person that can tell a king what to do, it's their doctor.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got this underground society of Robians, including Sonic's parents, Jules and Bernadette, and they do not look so good in this issue. I don't like how Penders draws them with weird robo lips.
Yeah, so Sonic's dad is fine-ish. He's a little strange. But Sonic's mom, what is with her beady eyes?
Yeah, she has a 1,000-yard stare like nothing I've ever seen.
It's the fact that they all look different in weird ways that doesn't make total sense to me. Like, Chuck is, you know, his Sat AM design for the most part.
Right.
He's got the black sclera and the red irises. But then Jules he looks okay. He's a different kind of weird, but, like, his nose is pointy, and he has these sort of triangle-shaped eyes, and he doesn't have pupils at all. And then Bernadette just looks like you took, like, her non-roboticized design, made her eyes red, and added squares and some bolts here and there.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to make them distinct, which they are.
I guess so, but right before that, they show 2 more Robians who just look like Mobians turned into robots, like Uncle Chuck.
Well, but they're not important characters.
Fair.
Well, I mean, I assume that's the reason.
No, I know. They don't get unique designs because they're not important enough. I get that much, but it's like the weird design inconsistencies are they're weird.
Yeah. Actually, it might also be different designers. The first one where we saw Jules roboticized was Nelson Ortega, whereas this one is Penders. So maybe Ortega designed Jules and Penders designed Bernie, so that might be it.
Maybe.
I mean, they didn't care about consistency with Crocbot, so
fair enough.
They could have just changed things.
Bernadette, I might add, named after Penders' wife.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Interesting, yes. I hope there's no greater meaning to that. Anyway, I do like that here when the roboticized Mobians are talking with Chuck, they finally add some weight back to robotization. For a while, it felt like it was, very cheap, just turn it back, pretty easy. But now, finally, they're dialing it back a little bit, and Chuck's like, no, because like you've been roboticized too long, and like if there were any of your parts were replaced, it'd be too risky. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah,
you don't want deroboticization to be cheap, but
right.
I appreciate that from a meta perspective. I still wish that Chuck would try. It seems like he's a bit defeatist to say, "Oh, I can't do it."
I think he's like, it's a better use of my time to try to get you, decent lives again in your current state. Right. Because as we see later on, he acts sort of as an ambassador for the Robians to everyone else. And so he has to spend all his time on that rather than research into derobotization. I mean, I would hope that he would do that later, but I think at the moment he's weighing priorities.
Yeah, no, I'm not criticizing Chuck. I'm just criticizing the execution of that plot.
Right, Chuck is perfect.
I don't think. Well, you said he should at least try, and I think he would. Is my point.
Right.
I don't think it says that he doesn't or doesn't plan to. He's just like, I can't right now.
Yeah. What else fucking happens in this? Oh yeah, they find one of Sally's trainees or whoever getting like trapped under a rock, I think.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and that's the point where, they're going to save him and they run into the Robians, and Sonic is surprised to see his parents are alive.
Mm.
And he runs off in an emotional huff, in tears even.
So you two tell me what you thought of this. But for me, if you're going to make a bit of dramatic tension like this, you should
Right.
set up the reasons before, it comes to a head like this. Whereas when he runs off, I'm like, huh? Why is he annoyed? Why is he angry?
Sonic does not have any emotional connection to these parents built up by the story. I'm not saying that he
Does
couldn't in universe, but we have not seen
yeah.
it. And our only implication that Chuck lied to Sonic about his parents being dead is that Sonic says so. But we see later, Sonic says, "Oh, he told me they were casualties of war." And, Tails rightly says they were casualties. They were roboticized.
Right.
So Sonic's anger does not make sense to me here.
I think the best way to look at it is, with all due respect to the character, Sonic's an emotionally stunted teenager. So he's even then, he he doesn't have much of a connection to his parents, and as far as he's concerned, they were a casualty of war. But I mean, I guess imagine from his point of view, still suddenly you're told, oh, by the way, your parents are still alive. That's going to hit you with a lot of emotions still.
Yes, but it's a case of again, it's an execution thing, because I think that you could totally spin it that Chuck intentionally lied to Sonic because he thought that if Sonic knew his parents were alive, that would distract him from the war against Robotnik, because he would constantly be trying to get his parents back. Look at Sally and the King, how, especially in Sad AM more than in this, she would do anything if she thought it would lead her to him. The problem is they didn't do that.
Yeah, that's true.
So if we're talking about future details in the coming issues, another thing is Sonic doesn't really seem to jive so well with his parents. So the fact that I mean, maybe it's the principle of the matter, but like, I don't know, if you're going to be so angry about that, like, oh, he doesn't take the time afterwards to, speak with his parents when when he thought they were dead. So it's weird that he has this huge outburst about that, about being deceived in this way. And yeah, my main thing is that if they had like built Sonic's parents a little bit, it's a weird thing. I remember when I was first reading these comics, which I didn't read the special, but they show up later too. I was like, oh, so Sonic has parents now. Okay, great. I would think that would be more important, but they're kind of just here. And it feels like they only brought them in just for drama like this.
It's hilarious to me, because they do have Sonic butt heads with his parents sometimes, which is ironic, because these are easily the most normal parents that Penders writes, compared to fucking Locke and Max, who are monsters at various points.
Fair enough.
Jules and Bernadette aren't perfect, but they're just trying to do the right thing most of the time.
Right. They're fine enough parents.
Oh my gosh. Suddenly I'm glad that they were made this way. I prefer this over those.
Yeah. But other people have pointed this out, but I like how on the page where Sonic is looking out over Robotropolis being angry, you can very clearly tell that all of this is drawn by Penders, except for the sad-looking Sonic, which is very clearly Spaziant.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's better for conveying the emotion. He kind of looks bored more than sad, if I'm honest.
Damn it, Devin, you're ruining an emotional scene.
I don't really think there was too much emotion there.
No, not particularly.
Hey, ruining emotional scenes is Sonic's job.
True.
Fair enough. I do appreciate the existence of this scene after Sonic's brooding with Sally and Jeffrey, where we've dunked on Jeffrey a lot, and rightfully so. He's a fucking creep, and he is not a creep in this scene, because he's trying to comfort Sally, but he's also trying to come onto her as fucking usual, which is why I like that Sally's kind of like, no thanks. She mostly resists him, I would say.
Yeah.
finally. I
Yeah.
can't believe they actually did that. Like, I would think that would end when Jeffrey left the series, but no. Yeah. But then it does just result in Jeffrey and Sonic fighting again, so that's kind of annoying.
I'm all for the cradle robber getting decked, but it is a case of they're making this out to be Sonic taking his anger out on Jeffrey when it's really just that Jeffrey deserves it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, first he got his ass beaten by Antoine, and he deserved it then, of course. Now he's getting his ass beaten by Sonic, and he still deserves it.
They should have had Antoine join in just for the fun of it.
I mean, I would have liked it a bit more then, but the fact of the matter is, it's just like they're just fighting for no reason. My favorite fight between Jeffrey and Sonic is when he's running away because there's actual meaning behind it then. I mean, there's meaning behind it here, but it doesn't accomplish anything. Everyone's just like, stop, this is silly. And they're like, we'll pick this up later. Like, there's no point to it, really.
Yeah. After that, we see that Sally is apparently receiving secret orders from the king. I don't really know what's up with that.
Yeah, they're setting something up that they do not explain here, as per usual. I mean, that's fine sometimes, but it kind of just leaves me confused here.
Well, and it's especially since Sally has been lacking a little bit of agency recently as it is, so to have her commands actually not even be her own is a little, like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But after that, we go to sea and we talk about the Robians, and they basically say, we're gonna start our own place separate from everybody organic.
Yeah. At this point in time, I'm like, huh? That's weird. Although they build on reasons for that later.
Yeah.
Well, they build on reasons for it, but it's weird to me because they all sort of collectively decide that they're going to live in their own colony separate from everybody else, which is weird to me just in that, like, you guys have families, you know? So many of the people here are parents because they were fighting in the war. You know, that's why so many of the characters in the comics are teenage orphans.
Sally even says that.
Yeah, that is a brought up detail.
Well, and again, this is why my recurring phrase for this issue is I get what they were going for, because they're trying to make it melancholy and feel a little bit wrong, but it's just not well justified enough for it to feel like anything other than stupid.
Yeah, like I said, they don't explain it really until later. I mean, it's like, oh, we're not welcome, but that's not shown in this issue, so that's confusing. Something that happens in a later issue we'll talk about tonight. I'm like, oh yeah, but in this one, no.
Yeah. So there are good moments here, and especially I do like the end where we close out on Snively in prison, and you can see what I think is like a miscolored Drago where they've colored him brown instead of white. It's meant to make you feel uneasy, and I am actually excited to see what Snively's plans are.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. Like I said, I was like, huh? He's defeated in like 2 seconds. And I'm like, oh no, there's something else. Because as per usual, I love it when these comics follow up on what Sad AM said. So let's get Snively some time to shine.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And that's it. That's Brave New World.
Yeah, so this feels like a transition comic. Is this really so remarkable?
I don't know. It's just I was just saying that it was that I remembered it. That I found it to be a memorable thing from Penders, and it's mostly just because it's different. It's going for this sort of melancholy, somber, so to speak, tone. It's not that it's like a really great comic, because I don't think it is a really great comic. It's just a very weird and different special.
I think it shows the kind of state of the world. You know, the very melancholy. You know, they won, but for lack of a better term, they won it, but at what cost? You know, they have they have Mobotropolis back, but the amount of work it's going to take to restore it back to the way it was is going to be a lot.
Yeah.
Fair enough, I suppose. I guess it does feel like the true launch into the next era. Because issue 51 and 52 barely touched on that.
That's very true.
And with that, do we consider this better or worse than Sonic and Knuckles Battle Royal?
I always forget what the stories are in each issue. Battle Royal obviously had Battle Royale. What other stories did it have?
It also had Hardcore Chad Twan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes this easy.
Yeah.
Okay,
no,
Battle Royale is the better one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure something will surpass it. As for right now, we are gonna head into the next issue after this, which is Sonic the Hedgehog number 53. What the hell are we looking at on the cover?
It's Sonic and Dr. Quack being menacingly approached by the king, but his body is like transparent, which that's not the way his crystals look usually. They're opaque.
Right.
Okay, part of that is that it's not the king, it's Kodos.
Oh.
Oh.
Okay. Well, yes, I forgot. You're right. Looking at this before reading it, I did read this. I just forgot that he turns into crystals in this. But he's opaque too.
Yes, no, it's still weird. I think it's that Spaziant drew this very detailed, Sonic, and it's like if you cover that up with arm, then what's the point?
I don't know. It's interesting looking, I suppose.
Yeah. Anywho, we are starting off this issue with... It's kind of like they have the backup story first in this issue, because it is Unfinished Business, written by Penders and drawn by Mawini, who it feels like we haven't seen in a while, but that's probably just because he wasn't around last episode. He was for the endgame episode. Where Knuckles and Julie Sue, actually, recoup with the Freedom Fighters and witness the awkward relationship that Sonic has with his father.
Yes, indeed.
One thing Knuckles and Sonic can have in common.
I guess you're calling this the backup story because it's less remarkable compared to the other story. But, I mean, it does still... Most backup stories don't really matter, but this does feel like it sets up a few things, mainly with, the parents. But anyway, I do find it funny that they brought in Knuckles and Julie Sue. It's like, hey, guys, did you know that there's a Knuckles series going on with a new character? Want to see more of that character? Read the series. It's an advertisement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other significant element of this is they know that the sword's not right now. They know it's fake, which is like, oh god,
Right.
Are we gonna send Knuckles on another quest for it?
We get Knuckles Quest 2 Electric Boogaloo.
But no, Knuckles basically says, yeah, a bunch of shit happened at home, and I can't really do that right now.
I can't go on a quest because Penders has other plans for me right now.
The Puppet Master.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's the first bit. I am refreshed to see when Sonic shows up that Knuckles and him are like, hey man, we're cool, yeah.
Yeah, they finally don't fight.
Like, wow.
Yeah, they're happy to see each other.
Yeah.
Are they actually...
At this point, I think they're beyond just fighting each other the moment they see each other.
I hope so. I don't remember for sure if it stays this way, but I hope so.
I'm gonna say...
I think it is.
Mostly, yeah. Which, of course, is hilarious, because then Jules has to fucking open his mouth to interrupt.
And he interrupts with the worst thing he could have.
It's time to talk about Sonic's name, everybody. Sonic's dad calls for him by his middle name, which Gallagher make a joke about in issue 1, I think, of the Sonic miniseries, where he said, oh, his middle name is Maurice, and Penders decided, okay, that's canon. That joke is canon. Which I don't necessarily have a problem with, because middle names are pretty inconsequential, and Maurice is a normal name.
Yeah.
But it's not, and it's not so typical that it's weird for Sonic to be a little embarrassed to be called by his dad. What I have a problem with is the second part of this, where Jules almost says Sonic's quote-unquote real first name. Don't fucking dead name your kids, by the way. Which is, allegedly an even more embarrassing name, which, why would you name your kid that if you know that it's embarrassing? But Sonic cuts him off, and the actual timeline of events, I want to be clear, because people repeat this a lot about Penders and about the comics, and, fair enough. But the actual timeline never had this first name appear officially, but we learned from some in-production versions of this issue that Ken Penders legitimately intended for Sonic the fucking Hedgehog's real full name to be Ogilvy Maurice Hedgehog.
Gosh darn it, you had to screw up both his names and you left Hedgehog as the last name?
This is how you know that your writer is not, in touch or on the pulse with what kids find cool about Sonic the Hedgehog. The name is a big part of that, you know?
Yeah.
Sonic is the perfect kids kind of cool, because what do kids think is cool than being able to run faster than all their friends?
Being named Maurice.
So, before we talk about his middle name, staying on that first name, so wait, that's never mentioned in the actual comics, that's just extra behind-the-scenes stuff?
Yes.
Well, then, can you really take it so seriously? I personally don't put tons of weight on, like, behind-the-scenes material that didn't actually make it in. I mean, that's cool for theories and whatnot, but I'm not going to take that immediately. I guess you could say that he does have some different first name. That is true, unless you're going to really bend over backwards and be like, nah, Jules is just messing around here, which perhaps. But I would like to think that he doesn't actually have a name that preposterous. And I'm going to be the contrarian here and say that actually I think it is perfectly fine for Sonic not to be Sonic's actual first name. He doesn't get along with his parents. I could totally see him taking on a different name to be rebellious.
That is not my problem. My problem is not that I don't hold this against this issue, death of the author style. What I mean is that people, when they talk about the comics, say, oh yeah, in the comics Sonic's real name is Old Jolvi. It's just something that comes up because discussion of Penders comes up, and the fact that Sonic's middle name is Maurice comes up. And that's not really the comic itself's fault. It is Penders' fault. And I was only saying it as a matter of the fact that he wanted to do this at all should have stood out to Archie's editorial staff as something potentially not that great. Which, technically I guess it did, since Ballers is the main writer for most of these issues. But, yeah, and no, I don't have a problem with Sonic not being Sonic's real first name. Frankly, I would have, I've talked about how I like the Nikki name. I like that from the manga.
Well, let's talk about the middle name. Why does he call him Maurice? Is this normal to call people by their middle name? Do people do that?
Some people, if they have multiple names, or they have, a over long or over formal first name, I have heard people go by their middle names before.
I guess
if it's an easier name to say.
So the only thing I can think of would be when I was in trouble, my mother used to call me by my Hebrew name occasionally, though. So I don't know.
Yeah, but Jules just saying it out here is just an excuse for Penders to write this scene. I don't think there's any...
Right.
Also, Knuckles reacts to that by saying, "Who's that screaming? It sounds like a strangled turkey." What? Why does Jules sound like a strangled turkey?
Well, he has an actual mouth now, unlike last issue.
Voice chip got damaged. I don't know.
Oh, Fair it's enough. The Sonic Colors bullshit all the way back in the 90s.
God.
Weird moment, for sure.
Yeah, that's a lot of discussion for this moment, but it's also that this story doesn't have anything else. It really just has Sonic's dad show up, and then Sonic butts heads with him, and Knuckles is like, hey, I've got my own shitty dad.
Knuckles basically says, cheers, I'll drink to that.
Yeah, this is pretty sad, now that I think about it. I literally had this thought just now, but Jules is like calling Sonic, I assume it's a nickname, kind of like what you were talking about, and he doesn't actually routinely call him Maurice.
I would assume not.
But like Sonic has grown up. It's been 10 years since they've seen each other, right? So the way this reads actually is that he's treating him like a little child because that's how he remembers him. But time has passed, and so now there's this disconnect. I think that's what they were going for, but that wasn't made super clear to me until I just realized it.
Yeah, that's not a bad way of looking at it.
The problem is that they're still trying to use Jules, as he's talking with Knuckles here, they're trying to use him as, the wise father figure, even though he's the one in the wrong in that case.
Right.
It's just a case of, I wish these people would just talk to each other.
It makes a little more sense with Sonic, because he runs away from his problems, because, I gotta go fast. But yeah, you're right.
Well, we could dwell on it, but as I've talked about, I'm not a fan of dwelling on it. I'm sorry, that's so fucking stupid. I can't make that a thing that I say anymore. Let's move on to our other story of this issue, which is Sounds of Silence, written by Simon and drawn by Garfunkel, maybe. No, it's written by Carl Ballers and drawn by Sam Maxwell. Sally and Sonic have a feelings jam over her struggles to lead the Kingdom of Acorn, but they're interrupted when an experiment goes awry, letting new villains Ixis Nagus, Warlord Kodos, and Yuma Arachnus enter Mobius from the Zone of Silence. Sally is wearing her vest buttoned up for this story.
Maybe it was cold.
Doesn't look cold. It is snowing outside, I think. But sorry, I just mixed reality and fiction.
You confused me there for a second.
I think you're right, actually, that it's cold. And it doesn't have to look cold. It can just be windy or something. Because Jeffrey shows up in this ridiculous golden cloak.
That is so weird.
He got rejected so hard he became a wizard.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, good for him making something with his life.
I do like Sonic trying to be supportive of Sally in this. He doesn't really have answers for her, but he's at least listening to her.
Right.
Yeah, it's a nice little moment at the beginning.
But Chuck and Quack were working on a probe into the Zone of Silence, but something ran awry and released the other guys stuck in there.
Heck yeah. We finally get Naugus in the comics. There's another piece of Sat AM that wasn't fully explored. There you go. So that's really, really cool to see they're bringing that in.
Yeah, he was
cool.
He was much more ambiguous in the show, which he was apparently meant to be the ultimate villain anyway, but they never got there. Here he is evil right from the outset.
Right.
Yeah, which that makes things a little more straightforward, because that is the weird thing about The Void, the episode that is, Inside AM, is the characters act like he's evil or whatever, but he doesn't act that way himself. So I think it was a smart decision to just be like, nah, he's just terrible right from the bat, to make it less confusing.
And he uses crystal magic, which, gives us part of the answer as to why Max is the way that he is.
I don't really understand it. Honestly, it makes things more confusing.
The idea behind it is that Naugus just naturally has crystal wizard powers, and he uses that in the Zone of Silence to fend off the madness waves, or just the madness atmosphere of the zone, and uses that to protect Arachnus and Kodos and Max as well. But apparently, I think what it is that they basically made a deal where Naugus gave the king the ability to become crystal, protect himself from the insanity of the zone, but the king yields his throne as payment. So what we see here is Naugus trying to close the deal when they don't want him to.
Okay, so you're telling me that remotely, as soon as King Max was taken out of the Zone of Silence, Naugus was like, hey, where'd he go? I'm going to turn him to crystal, wherever he is. Really?
I think it's more that he just didn't have as much control over it without Naugus there, maybe. I admit that it's not clear exactly why it does that to the king in the first place.
Okay, that half makes sense, but yeah.
But a big chunk of this is just fighting against these guys, because most of them are just cartoon villains. Kodos is a big... I don't know what I think he's a lion, maybe? He doesn't really look like it.
He looks like a lion. I'd say he looks like a lion.
Okay. He's got an axe, and he's large, and Arachnus is a spider and a ninja, and she mostly just does not talk very much at all.
She seems like the less important of the two summoned baddies, to be honest.
Well, because they give her nothing, at least for now, maybe later. But
Yeah.
Kodos, at least, was the previous warlord, so he's got
a little bit of lore on him already.
But Arachnus is just there. They're just a cool ninja.
We're gonna find out that she used to work for the king, just to complete the, quadro trifecta of everybody who works for Max betraying him.
Good God. There's a little detail here that I appreciate, in that at one part, Sonic reflects the crystals back to Naugus, and he exclaims, Vale's bones! Which, that's a terrific exclamation of surprise, I must say. And also, a subtle hint of something that will show up way later.
Oh?
I actually don't know what that is.
Really? Oh, interesting. Well, we'll get there, I guess, when we get there. Vale is a person.
Huh.
I do like the scene after their battle. They kind of just run away, I guess, because they can't really beat Naugus. But, they go and see the king, and they talk to him, and they basically establish all the stuff that I talked about. although apparently not so well that we actually understood it. But I do like that the king is acting less fucking psychotic as compared to Brave New World. He's very different under Baller's pen compared to Pender's.
Yeah, so you giving that background that the two writers were fighting makes this make a lot more sense.
It really does.
I read this story and I'm like, was that a fluke? No, he's going to go right back to his previous nonsense in a later story. But yeah, here the king acts exactly as I would expect him to. He's still in poor health. His text and speech bubbles are written in a way to indicate that he's speaking kind of in a belabored manner. Like he's very sick. Good, that makes sense. And then secondly, he's acting very reasonable. So it's weird that he's like that when he was completely different the other issue.
Yeah, and I don't know. I like the way that Sam Maxwell draws him. He has much softer features under that, even with the crystallization, and it just makes the fact that he's being reasonable to a degree. He looks nicer. He's a nicer looking boy.
He does. Yeah, he ends up looking more like a wise king than, evil, not evil. Yeah, shithead dictator.
Well, yeah, I agree.
Though he's moving way too much still.
Yes, that's true. I don't understand how he can move his crystal limbs, but at least it's much closer to what I'd expect.
Yeah.
But they basically all resolve to it's basically just to exposit on who the hell these guys are, and they say, well, we're gonna fight him and stop him, and so they go fight them, and they only half win pretty much.
Yeah, so Sonic has this 200 IQ moment where he's like, aha, Nagus, you think you're so smart with your deception. I'll just take your crystal blast. Oh, see, guys, look, it just turned my shoes and gloves to crystal because it only affects inanimate objects. It was so obvious because he didn't shoot it at us. He shot it at the ground in front of us. And you may be asking why his minions turn to crystal? Because if you're willing, then you can turn to crystal like that. Makes tons of sense. How did he figure that out? What the heck?
Why Sonic is so shit at magic?
Sonic just seems to really enjoy his 1,000 IQ moves.
Every so often in the comics, he has a moment like that, and it's always surprising.
I mean, I guess it's better than just being comically overpowered, for the 18th time.
Sonic's using his brain.
He does do something clever. I just don't know how the hell he would expect to know that.
I kind of like the bit how he wasn't firing directly at us, but he's like, oh yeah, well, yeah, of course it would apply differently to his minions, though. That's the bit that really confuses me.
Well, there is going to be a running theme of, the way that we can have the villains be this and the heroes be this is whether they choose it or whatever. That's actually something that applies way later that I guess is just something that Ballers like to write, in that they later apply that to a different form of roboticization.
Yes, I remember what you're talking about, and that came to my mind as well. I can somewhat explain that. We'll get there. But yeah, you're right. That's interesting. Parallel.
Damn, y'all keep dropping these hints about future shit that I haven't read yet.
I didn't even know
these
that
comics
read that.
are a ride. To be honest, I've not read it, but I saw him say Vale's Bones. I'm like, I know these comics. Looked it up. I'm like, thank you, Archie. Always with that continuity.
Awesome. Well, yeah, so basically Nagus gets away, and Arachnus and Kodos, without him there to keep them in line, are just crystal statues.
Yeah, naturally, when the staff is destroyed, the people who are turned to crystal can no longer move themselves. That's obvious.
Naturally.
Yeah. There isn't really anything else. They're basically saying, I guess Nagus is a villain now.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of how they introduced Mammoth Mogul, actually. They show up, they fight, and they're like, see you later, without any huge grand plan that's obvious. Although in this one, actually, Nagus, literally loses, because he loses his staff, he loses his two minions, so he has to run away.
He really does, yeah.
Yeah, you're right about that in terms of the structure. I prefer Nagus to Mogul just because he's got that bitterness about the king and losing his place, as the wizard and all that. I just find him, personality-wise, to be more interesting than Mogul, but maybe they'll do more with Mogul. I actually don't remember that well.
Yeah, the characters themselves, I like both of those characters, actually. obviously I'm going to be biased because Nagas was inciting him too. But so I'm just saying for introductions they're weak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, let's keep that weak momentum going. That's a terrible way to start an issue. With Sonic the Hedgehog number 54, and another cover that makes it look like it's going to be really, really important, even though not a ton happens in this issue.
Yeah, Snively's on the cover here, but he really does stuff next issue, actually. There's just more setup here with him. This is not atypical of Archie Sonic covers, to be fair.
No, we've talked about this dozens of times. The story here is Running to Stand Still, written by Pollers, drawn by Nelson Ortega. A vignette of Sonic's frustrations and anxieties plays out through flashback against a backdrop of Chuck testing Sonic's maximum speed, is how I decided to phrase that, and that's mostly correct, I think.
Yeah, no, I think so. I find this a very logical turn of events, actually, to have Sonic basically just be bored. He's like, gosh, nothing to do. Got to run around all over the place. And Chuck's like, well, if you're going to do that, I'm going to measure your speed.
Right.
Sure. Sounds about right.
He's constantly overloading them, though, because of pent-up aggression on Sonic's part toward Chuck.
Right, and I'm not so big a fan of that. It's weird because in Brave New World, Sonic was like, ugh, this sucks. And then Tails was like, dude, like, it makes sense to me. Come on, cheer up. And he's like, yeah, you're right. But then this issue, he's like, never mind, still mad.
Yeah, and we see through, our various flashbacks how Sonic kind of got into this state where, they're trying to reestablish the Momotropolis government. And it's like, oh, we got a council. But Sonic is completely wasted on a diplomatic front. That's not where he belongs.
Yeah, they make Sonic a fucking bureaucrat.
But yeah, he could have just been like, no thanks.
I feel like he only agreed to it because, people know who he is.
I feel like if he really is like so fed up with it and he's not going to go with it, like it's his own fault. Like he didn't need him. There are plenty of other notable individuals. I mean, you've got Quack for some reason. I get he's like medical representative or something. I'm not sure how that makes any sense. Why do you need him there? But, and then you've got Rotor and Sally and Jeffrey. And so Sonic doesn't need to be there.
They should have put Antoine on the council. That's where he shines typically, because he's always the one who's huffy about the process. He's the one who prosecutes Sonic. Oh, well, maybe that's the wrong person to have in government. I don't know, but...
Well, Antoine is already basically an action hero who can also act as a bureaucrat.
Oh, he's like Hermes Conrad. But yeah, this issue is mostly, it's again another kind of vibes-based issue where for Sonic it's about frustration because he's like, oh, I can't, I don't have anything to do, and he even gets angry at someone saying the word adventure to him, which is very funny to hear as a Sonic fan in 2022. Oh, this issue's going up after New Year's though, so. But
well, we're recording it in 2022, so it's fine.
But it makes sense for Sonic as a character.
Yeah, no, like I said, that part is quite logical, I think. What's more confusing, I don't remember exactly where it's mentioned, but Knothole is basically deserted at this point. Makes sense. Don't want to live in a secluded location that's set 3 hours in the future, because that's confusing. Although they mention...
taking a flight.
They do mention, though, that the Robians wanted to stay there, and the king was like, nah, and they refused to elaborate.
Yeah, just fucking whatever. There's a lot of stuff that goes on each page. Each page is very dense with dialogue, and especially a lot of narration boxes in this issue. But it's mostly just either, allusions to the ongoing political situation with Knothole and Mobotropolis, or Snively in prison planning his next move.
So, even though he doesn't really warrant a cover focus, I do like the Snively moments here, because he is having the time of his life. Like, look at this dude. He is just so happy, and he's in prison because he's the kind of guy that enjoys plotting and planning. And so he's like, oh boy, everyone is going to be so caught off guard when I execute my plan. It is great. Like, I love that.
Well, and frankly, his room in prison looks more comfortable than anywhere we saw him in Robotropolis. His bed looks way softer.
That's true. I think well, King Max may ruin this, but I think the freedom fighters are a little more progressive about their prison systems, and they're like, if you make everything miserable and hopeless, that's not going to really be great at, rehabilitation. It's just going to, ruin lives or whatever.
I mean, it's still also called the Devil's Gulag, so I don't know how much you can expect.
I'm not sure that. Yeah, you brought that up before. That's a strange name. I don't get it.
As opposed to the regular gulags. In any case, there is a scene after we last see Snively where Sonic runs into Rosie, who is not really, a very significant character in all this, but it does get him to sort of realize what all of this anxiety is about. And it's that Sonic basically feels useless without somebody to fight.
Right.
And I think that, this issue is not particularly great, but I do really, really like that for a character turn of Sonic, because that's exploring the implications of killing off Robotnik in a way that makes logical sense for the characters. Because Sonic is not designed to live in a society. No version of Sonic ever has been. Except maybe Sonic Boom Sonic, but he's the spirit of freedom, and what the king is building to replace Robotnik's tyranny is still not freedom for the most part.
Yeah, so that is cool, and I think that makes sense. However, we've seen in other pieces of Sonic media that when he's not fighting Robotnik, he tends to travel the world or whatever. So why doesn't he just do that? I'm need a vacation, guys.
Well,
I guess, yeah.
I don't mean to spoil for you, but that's next week.
Well, he took a while to come to that conclusion. I assume that's what he would have. Well, I mean, I guess he was a young kid before all these. This is all he's ever known. Yeah, I guess that maybe adds up.
I'm also wrong.
I was conflating other versions of Sonic with this one. I guess in this continuity, it makes sense.
Yeah. And thankfully we end off with Sonic and Chuck having a feelings jam, as it were, where Sonic acknowledges that he's been a bit over emotional.
You skipped over the egg bots that literally hatch from eggs.
I didn't know how to work it into the explanation. What the fuck are you supposed to say about that? They look more like egg robos than the egg robos we saw in the Chad Tuan comic, but they're not called egg robos. And yes, they hatch from eggs.
I mean, you just say it because it's amazing and I love it.
Yeah.
It is a little strange, though, that it's Snively doing this. You would think he wouldn't be so obsessed with egg designs, but I guess Robotnik really rubbed off on him.
And it's funny because they attack Sonic and Chuck after their feelings jam, and it's like, oh, to be continued in the next issue. And then the next issue mostly does not start like that at all. You'd think that it's a completely unrelated story.
Yeah, it's it looks like the egg robos are about to attack, but actually they're just flying by.
Yeah.
Very strange.
There's a fucking sparkle of light like it's about to shoot, but nope.
Yeah, they're just like, huh, what's that in the sky? That's weird. That's the idea, but it looks like, I feel like they did that on purpose, or they changed their mind, or something.
Well, the next issue is Sonic the Hedgehog. What?
Wait. Okay. There's a great moment in the background where Tails is chasing a dragonfly, and he loses. It's hilarious.
Okay. Oh yeah, he gets his entire upper body stuck in a tree trunk.
Yeah.
Okay, are we done? Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The next issue is Sonic the Hedgehog number 55, and what I was going to say is that the disconnect may come from the fact that it's written and drawn by a completely different person. And as you can see on the cover here, Monkey.
Little monkey fella.
Yes, we're finally here for Monkey Con.
Carl Pilkington.
Looking forward to this guy.
Monkey Madness, written and drawn by Frank Strom, someone who we've not seen at all on this comic yet. Sally accidentally unearths a simian cyborg being transported by egg robos. Sonic and the new rival Monkey Con butt heads until both are forced to admit they're being unreasonable and work together to scrap the egg bots.
The egg robos are not transporting the storage unit for Monkey Con. He's just there by pure coincidence. They're busy excavating.
Yeah, it's true.
Something else.
Okay, well, I don't know what the fuck they're doing is part of it. This issue and the way that it connects to the previous one are really weird is part of the problem. And because we are to assume that at the end of the last issue, they look like they're about to get shot, and Sally's radioing, Sonic, get back here. And then at this one, Sonic has already ignored the egg robos that look like we're about to shoot at him, run back to base, and then picked up Sally and carried her back to the exact same spot, I suppose. I don't know where the hell Chuck went. And Antoine is, yeah.
Usually the writers do a better job than this. But I'm looking back, I kind of just forgot. But the previous issue ends with Sally being like, there's like an emergency or something. But they never explain that. Do they also cite the egg robos or something?
I don't
and so
know.
They're like, the emergency is there's egg robos. And Sonic's like, oh, why did you just say that? Let's go.
This is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this issue was written completely independently of the last one, but they had to slot it in here because it was done or whatever, and they needed to do something. And so they just, came up with whatever story they could, writing-wise, to make it kind of work.
Well, I could have made a better continuation without knowing where this is going. It's very basic to at least explain the cliffhanger, but they kind of didn't really do a great job of that. Anyway, usually I feel like the continuity is more consistent. I mean, sometimes it's like back and forth in that it's like, oh, that wasn't really what you thought it was, like when they try to re-explain the void or whatever. But at least they acknowledge what happened. But in this one, they're not even doing that. Anyway.
Yeah.
On to the actual story. There's once again a recap page. And this brings an interesting bit of backstory, which I appreciate, which is that before Robotnik stole robotization from Chuck, he experimented with cyborgs. That's interesting.
Yeah, and one such cyborg is hidden in this magic fridge that I guess that's what the robots are looking for, probably. I thought they were carrying it because I'm stupid. And contained within it is a Walking Journey to the West reference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this moment for some reason sticks in my mind. I don't know why, because I didn't get the reference. That's not the reason that it stuck in my mind when I first read this. But it was more that like we're just introducing new random weird characters now. It feels kind of like the start, even though it not truly, because we still got the plot hook of Snively, where the writers just start going in weird directions.
Well, yeah, it's the fact that they introduce Khan here by having Sally open up the capsule, and then he just spends an entire half a page talking about how cool he is, and ending off with saying who he is. It's like he had a prepared speech for this.
Oh, you know damn well that he did.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was imprisoned for who knows how long.
If you gotta do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you start preparing a speech for whoever frees you.
That makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the fact that the power ring changes shape and gets a red gem when Khan wears it. I guess I'll just add that to the list of things the power ring does, because it does whatever the plot wants it to do.
It does whatever Journey to the West wants it to do, because Sun Wukong, the Monkey King of Journey to the West, had a magic crown.
Yes.
Why was it couldn't just be a ring? I don't know.
And had a gem?
So, in Journey to the West, the crown is used to control the Monkey King.
Yeah.
If anything, it's doing the opposite with Monkey Khan. It's giving him power.
I would have been...
Yeah.
If it was just buried separately as the crown, because you don't want him to have his power crown, then you wouldn't have had to confuse me with it being a power ring, and that would have been fine.
They should have had this be Sonic's billionth ring and, like, retconned it so that it wasn't actually a billionth ring.
Anyway.
It was just this extra special crown that happened to... he picked it up.
I do find it funny that it seems like all the robots that rebel against Robotnik are insane and want to take over the world because he's going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. As you said, prepared speech, and he's like, all shall bow before me. Like, what the heck?
Yeah. He's not megalomaniacal, but he's, he thinks he's hot shit. But then he destroys the Eggbots, which I don't know if we differentiate between those and Egg Robos. But he does that, and then Sonic just arbitrarily decides to attack him? Like, he doesn't have a real reason for it, does he?
He's fucking with Sonic's cool factor.
It's because Sally, I think, mentions that it was like he was found in a Robotnik thingy-majiggy. He's like, oh, made by Robotnik, that can't be any good news. Jumps to conclusions. I mean, that's usually a safe conclusion. Even if he had heard it, I mean, he's totally right. Yes, good. He made the right judgment.
Yeah.
I guess, but from a visual perspective, he could just be some guy.
That's also fair.
Yeah, no, she literally says he's a cyborg created by Robotnik. So, yeah, no, I totally am with Sonic here. That makes sense.
Well, and in fairness, he's not completely wrong, because even though Khan is in some possession of his mental faculty, he's certainly not doing Robotnik's bidding, But he does just kidnap Sally because I guess everybody's horny for Sally in these comics.
Woofa, such radiant beauty I hadn't noticed before. I shall now devote every waking hour to basking in the heavenly glow of your loveliness. So over the top.
You forgot the middle line there, which is Monkey Khan has been alone for far too long. He's a fucking incel.
Oh my god.
He talks like one too. He's like, fare thee well, my lady.
Yeah, a little bit.
Anyway, so that leaves Sonic and Antoine both to fight off the rest of the Egg Robos and to catch up with Khan and Sally. And
what is strange for me is that Sally is literally just like, hey, stop being a jerk. And Khan's like, okay.
Yeah. She calls him, she's like, you're an egotistical chode. And then he's like, you're right. I shouldn't be.
Yeah, fair enough, my man.
-5 Gary Stew points. I'll go back and help those guys.
The way this guy comes off, Monkey Khan, my gosh. It seems like he was like, locked away and became bitter, which fair enough. He was like, I know. As soon as I manage to get out of here, my wrath will go upon the world, and I'll make this great speech, and I'll wreck everything. And that was all he had in his mind for who knows how long. And the moment something to the contrary was like, no, then he was like, oh yeah, okay. Like,
yeah, fair enough.
He didn't really think about it very much. He was just like,
yeah,
this guy, he's not a very satisfying character.
So he's less Son Goku and more Majin Buu in terms of philosophy. Yeah, no, it's a very weird thing, and this is just a weird character, a weird writer and artist. Like, the art is not terrible exactly, it's just kind of strange looking. And this was the thing, is that Frank Strom would only ever do solo stories, pretty much. And they were almost always contained to those stories until, like, Ian Flynn came along. So Khan and every other concept from Frank Strom only appears with Strom's writing and Strom's art, which I guess lends it a distinct feel, but it also makes it feel unrelated to everything else that's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's kind of it. He makes up with Sonic and flies off, and maybe we'll see him again sometime. Very weird story.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But we have another weird story, but weird in a very, very different way in this issue, which is our final story for tonight. We're only doing 4 issues, which is Uncle Chuck, hell yeah, in Rise of the Obians. Probably Rise of the Robians, but I hate when they do that with just the one letter.
Jesus Christ.
Nice. Which is written by Ballers and drawn by Andy Underwood and Edwards Artistic Studios? No idea who that is, who this art team is. They only ever worked on this story, and Google does not turn up much about it at all. And I think the Andy Underwood, who was a background artist on Disney Animation Productions, is probably a different guy. Maybe it's not. But the story for this one, which I forgot to write a summary for like an idiot, is basically that the Flesh Mobians are being racist towards roboticized people. So Chuck saves one girl who's being, like, attacked by an angry mob, and they're like, we gotta figure out how to sort this out. And so they take it to the king, and the king gives them the worst answer imaginable by saying, actually, we're just gonna fucking kill all of them. We're just gonna genocide the Robians. And, everybody's like, what the hell? And, Sonic, Sally, and the others show up, and the king is raving, and then he passes out, and Sonic makes a smug comment, and it's totally unfitting, and that's the end.
Yeah, that very good summary.
Damn, I don't think we have to talk about it. I think that
we almost hit all the points right there.
I'm sorry, this issue hit me in a weird way, and not just because it's basically the same plot as Deus Ex Human Revolution. Cyborgs are not going to be an oppressed group. It's much closer to an innate trait, like race or sexuality or whatever. So, them not having a say in whether they're flesh or steel, I guess is part of it, but it is a weird-ass story.
Okay, so yes, first of all, why is it called Rise of the Robians? They don't rise in any way. It's a weird
things
title.
Get much worse for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, we start off with rando guy Tuscaloosa being like, oi, you're being a sneaky person, and because you're a robot, you must be up to no good. And Uncle Chad shows up. He's like, did you forget about me? And he's like, nah, they must have been terrible. It's the only way. And they're like, well, let's talk to the king. And yeah, then as you said, it's really weird because he starts off like super calm. He's like, am I not still king? And everyone's like, whoa, your majesty, that's great that you're here. You go ahead
He'll
because
sort
Sally's
this out.
gone. And then in the next frame, it's like he flips between Ballers and Penders' king on a dime. Because like, I've heard the proceedings. Can't put it any more than you. Let's commit genocide and kill them all.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
what the gall of this guy.
This is what I was saying about Ballers trying to repair the king compared to Penders, is that Penders just writes Max like that because that's how he is. Ballers is trying to play that behavior off and make the moral of the story, more than cyber racism is bad, the moral of the story is the king is very clearly unwell.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, so, I don't remember what the next issue is, and I haven't read it. I thought this was setting up something that's going to be explained next story. Is it?
Next week, yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, so good. Yes, that makes sense, I guess. But, yeah, what the heck is this? It's just, the way they do it, it's a million miles an hour instantly. I like that even Tuscaloosa is like, when he's the one who accused them originally, he's suddenly like, you're out of your mind. Like literally everyone is like that, so it's very clearly over the top. Yeah, and then Sonic's like, whatever.
Yeah, I cannot stand Sonic in this final frame where like everybody's like, oh god, what the fuck is going on? And then the screen comes on with Knuckles is like, we got problems, I need your help. And Sonic's like, you ever have one of those days? It's like, fuck you, Sonic. Everything is going to hell. I'm gonna have to put this bastard in the thumbnail just because I hate him so much.
But yeah, I didn't remember this moment, and it's just a trip reading through these last few pages. He even smacks Jeffrey, who's like his most loyal follower.
Well, because Jeffrey's even questioning, is it, smart to dismantle all of the Robians?
Yeah.
And, well, we will get the answer to that next week, but for right now, yeah, it is really, really just out of left field, everything in this. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
The line from him at the end, I think, sums it up perfectly. After giving the order to dismantle all the Robians, it's like, why is my power being undermined? I gave an order and I want it carried out. Yeah, you're right. He's just delusional. I should have guessed that.
I don't know. Well, reading this, my first thought was maybe not delusional, but that there's something going on.
I thought he was like mind controlled or something.
Right.
But that also makes sense. I always expect a supernatural explanation before the more believable, although I don't think it would manifest quite like this. I would think there would have been signs before.
I don't think this is how senility works. I don't think it makes you suddenly try to kill everyone around you. I don't know. I admit to not having dealt with it much. And also, Max should only be like in his 50s at the most. But
well, yeah, but I feel like spending the time in the void is really going to
it's going to his
no matter
head.
how old you are. Yeah, it's going to his head.
I think the madness wasn't fully cured. He remembers who he is, but he's still unhinged.
Right. Unhinged is a good way to put it.
Well, we are going to see what's up with that next time, and we're also going to help out Knuckles next time. But for tonight, that's where we're done, I think. Super friggin' weird issues. I have no idea how to judge these. Some of them were kind of good. Couple were maybe not so much, but if you enjoyed, feel free to share, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can reach us at deepdivezonepod@gmail.com or at deepdivezone on Twitter. And I'm working on setting up a co-host. That's the one that I hope is going to win out as Twitter replacement. I don't know. But in the meantime, we hope you have a great night, and we will see you next week. Take care.